What is going on, everybody, and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking about defining the idea for your game. So in this video I'm going to be going over some kind of general steps and specific steps of things that you can do to help you figure out what your game is and what your game's identity will be. So this is kind of taking your game from that very initial idea stage of just kind of having this like small sliver of a kernel of an idea and actually growing that into like a full realized game plan. So basically what I mean by this is, let's say you come up with some crazy small little idea for a game, like maybe make a platformer where you don't jump. So you're like, okay, this is a cool idea, that's an interesting little idea, I wonder if I could make a game about that. So you go sit down at your computer, you open up your game engine of choice, and then you kind of just stare at the screen like, so what exactly do I do? And then maybe you start kind of building some things out, and then what you end up kind of doesn't really match what you had in your mind. So I guess what I'm getting at is that it's really important to kind of define the idea of your game. You know, once we have that small kernel of an idea, how do you actually take that to the next step and really expand upon that and have something that you can actually, you know, have like a nice list of things that you need to make for your game. So when you actually eventually do go sit down in front of your computer to make the game, you have a pretty clear idea of what to do and which order to accomplish those things in. But before I get into that, I'd just like to say, if you found this video helpful and you enjoyed it, make sure you leave it a like. Also feel free to subscribe to the channel for lots more game development videos like this one. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future videos, feel free to leave those down in the comments section below. So my first general tip is to just go out and experience more things in life. You may have already heard this before, or it may sound obvious to you, but it's really important that you go out there and experience a bunch of different things that you can kind of draw inspiration of when you're going to make the idea of your game. Now for me, I really love the outdoors, so I love getting outside, going on hikes. Even just this past weekend I went on a big houseboating trip with a bunch of my college friends, and it was an excellent time. And while I don't think it's the best idea to just be wandering out in the woods all the time or partying with your friends every weekend on boats, it is important to do those things every once in a while just to kind of mix it up and give you some different experiences that you might not otherwise have on a regular basis. So then another one kind of along those lines would be to take up a different hobby, maybe even two. Ideally these would be things that aren't even related to games or technology at all, to really just give you a completely different perspective. For me, I really enjoy exercise, so I train jiu-jitsu a couple times a week. I also run quite a bit and do some other exercises to stay fit. It's something that's really fun for me, and it's a really great thing to do to get my mind off of game development or anything else crazy going on in my life. And when you're doing all these kind of extra activities, it's really important to just kind of stay in the moment, be in the moment, really absorb the experience, look at all the different sights and sounds that are happening. And as long as you're just kind of being present and aware and enjoying the moment, I think you can really take a lot from those experiences. And so while doing these other different things like hiking, going on houseboat trips, or training jiu-jitsu, it's not going to directly inspire my game. I'm not going to, make a game about running or something like that. But doing all these things, they've taught me just a bunch of little lessons, and from those I can kind of grab a small little lesson of that and kind of expand upon that and make something really meaningful. And so that kind of brings me to my next point of general, good things to keep in mind when you're expanding on a small little idea for your game. And that would be to make sure that you actually have something to say. And so kind of what I mean by this is that the barrier to entry for making video games is getting lower and lower and lower. It's a lot easier to make video games nowadays than it was, even just a decade ago. And that's definitely a good thing. It's a really good thing that a lot of people are able to express themselves through this medium and make something really great that they can show the whole world. And so if your game actually has something to say, it's really going to separate your game from everyone else's. So it'll take just a good game and make it a really great game. I've played a bunch of games that just don't really have anything to say. They don't have a soul to them, and they just kind of feel empty and almost not even worth playing sometimes. And it's really sad when a developer goes through all the trouble of making a game and maybe even hiring a team and spending a bunch of money on making a game, and it just doesn't really have anything to say, and then just kind of gets lost in the pack and just kind of ends up being a bit of a failure. And for that reason, your game should have something to say, and it should be kind of known very early on in development what your game is trying to say, so you kind of have a clear direction of where you're going to take the game. And that's really going to influence a lot of the small decisions that you make on your game. And I don't mean this just in the literal sense of your game should tell a good and interesting story, or maybe make a political statement or something like that. But it's really beyond that, because games are an interactive medium, and so you can say something cool through gameplay, even if you just want to say like, hey, this is a really freaking dumb fun game, and it does that extremely well. That is definitely something to say, and that speaks. One excellent example of this is Jonathan Blow's fantastic game, The Witness, which is one of my favorite games of all time. And in this game, there's pretty much no story at all. I mean, there are kind of like little weird audio journals that you can find, but I mean, I completely skipped those. That wasn't why that game was great and why that game said something to me. That game was great because it made me freaking act like a crazy person, scratching all kinds of notes and drawings on little pieces of paper, trying to like figure out different ways to solve these puzzles. I mean, this game came out when I was in college, and I would literally like go to class, and before I went to class, I'd draw out the puzzle, and then while I was in class, I'd like be figuring out solutions to this puzzle. And then even beyond that, it had all these like really cool optical illusions where if you looked at certain things in certain ways, or you lined up the shadows correctly, you could see different things. And it's just a really, really excellent masterclass example of good game design. And to me, that is a game that really says a whole lot without saying anything at all. There's no dialogue at all. And if you can make a game that does that, you're going to have no problem selling copies of your game. So anyways, those are some of the general tips that I have for you to help you actually evolve your idea from a small kernel of an idea to actually a full direction for your game. I think I'm actually going to separate this out into 2 videos. So the next video that I'm going to be making will kind of go over some of the specific ideas and specific things that you can do on a daily or weekly basis to actually, take your idea from that small kernel of a game to something more fully fledged that you can actually work with, and you have a good direction to go ahead and develop your game with. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave it a like. Also, feel free to subscribe to the channel for lots more game development videos like this one. Of course, if you have any questions for me or suggestions for future videos, feel free to leave those down in the comment section below. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.